The Federal Minister for Education, Dan Tehan, is in Canberra and he joins me now. Minister, thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a lot on your plate. I want you to tell Australian parents tonight, and grandparents too, why the advice that you got from all the medicos and indeed the Premiers and the Prime Minister agreed to support it is that schools should remain open.
Good evening, Peter. Well, there's two main reasons why we've got that advice and why we're acting on it. And can I just go back one step? Australians should be reassured that we are getting the very best medical advice as a government from some of the best medical experts in the world. And that medical advice is coming from state and territory chief medical officers and from the Commonwealth Chief Medical Officer. And they presented a case to premiers, to territory leaders and to the Prime Minister last night, which said that schools should remain open for these two reasons. The first is that we need our health workforce in place, and if we were to move to close schools, it could impact 30% of our health workforce. Now that would have huge implications for our ability to be able to deal with the spread of the coronavirus in this country. So that's the number one reason, incredibly important. The number two reason is that if children are at home, then often parents, because they've got to work, need to get other people in to look after children. Often that has to be grandparents, it might be uncles, aunts, other elderly people, and that puts them at greater risk. And they also mentioned, if you look at Singapore, which is often held up as a gold standard example, they have kept their schools open. So that's the best medical advice that we have at this stage. We will continue to look at it. The health experts will continue to monitor it, but that is why the government is very keen to see schools remain open.
We know that some of the private schools have closed and moved to online learning. We also know the Sydney Catholic schools have done the same thing. I guess, you know, parents and mums and dads in government schools would want to know they're not just being used as childminding services for health workers, but you're saying that what unanimous advice from health experts is that the schools should remain open?
Absolutely, unanimous advice from the health experts. And can I say that the Catholic systemic system has backed this as well, so all the Catholic schools in the systemic system are remaining open as well. Now, there has been some independent schools which have moved to go online, and one of the things that the government has asked those independent schools is to make sure that they are providing online teaching at their schools so that those parents that don't have the choice to be able to have their students remain at home have an options to still be able to attend school and to be able to do that online learning there in a space where we know that they are being looked after. Can I say to principals and teachers, this is a very uncertain time for you. We understand that. Can I say thank you for what you're doing on behalf of parents, on behalf of the country, in making sure that you're continuing to teach our children. It's incredibly important that you do that. And can I just say publicly, from the federal government's point of view, and I know I speak for all territory and state education ministers as well, to those principals and teachers who are out there still delivering education, thank you very much for what you're doing.
It is unusual, I have to support you here, Minister, to find Chief Medical Officer, State Medical Officers, Premiers of all political persuasions, Chief Ministers and Education Ministers around the country all be on the same page with this decision. No one's broken ranks and said that they disagree with the decision taken last night to keep schools open. That in itself is pretty extraordinary.
It is, and Peter, can I say it's one of the incredibly important things of having a national cabinet. It is working incredibly well. It means that the Prime Minister can come together with premiers, with territory leaders, have these discussions look at the medical advice, and it's medical advice which is coming from states and territories and the Commonwealth, and make decisions which are in the national interest. And the first thing that we're doing in the national interest is making sure that the public health safety of the Australian people is being protected. It is proving to be an incredibly important decision to set up this national cabinet. It's working well. That unity of message and unity of purpose is just so important in these times, and that is why parents should be reassured with the decisions that the government is making, because it is on the very best medical expert advice.
Minister, I've got to say, I feel for Year 12 students. It's a stressful year anyway. I don't know if I can remember my Year 12 year. I don't know if you can. You know, are ministers like you and others around the country thinking of them, and whether special arrangements might be made for exam periods that they'll have over this 12-month period?
So all those things are being considered. You're absolutely right. For those Year 12 students, it's an incredibly stressful time. So depending on what unfolds, but absolutely when it comes to their ATARs, all these things will be taken into consideration, because none of us at the start of the year were expecting that we would be dealing with this virus, and that this virus would be having the impacts that it is.
Dan Tehan, I know you've got a lot on tonight there in Canberra. I really appreciate you making time for us this evening.
A pleasure, Peter.